I, 29 male, work as a senior network security analyst, and I am usually a pretty quiet, observant guy. My fiancé, well, ex-fiancé now, was 27 female. She operated what she called a boutique event planning business. We lived in a 4-bedroom house that I purchased entirely on my own 2 years before I even met her. The arrangement was simple and fair when she moved in. I paid the mortgage, the property taxes, and the home insurance. She covered our groceries and her personal expenses. Over the last 6 months of our relationship, her lifestyle started drastically outpacing her apparent income. Brand new designer shoes and bags started appearing in our closet. She took frequent weekend spa trips with women she referred to as her industry networking group. Whenever I asked about her business revenue or how the event planning was going, she would deflect. She claimed she was landing high-tier corporate clients who paid in cash or direct wire transfers to a separate business account. I didn't push it at first because I respected her independence, but my gut was telling me something was off. The real shift happened when my expensive items started vanishing. First, it was a vintage gold watch my grandfather left me. Fiancée claimed she must have accidentally thrown it out while decluttering my nightstand. Then, a high-end camera lens disappeared from my office. Again, she blamed a misplaced charity donation box. I am a logical person, and things do not just vanish into thin air. Because of my background in security, I quietly installed a micro camera in the primary bedroom and another in the living room, tying them to a hidden server in my home office. A week later, her MacBook crashed hard. She panicked. She had a major client presentation and needed the files off the local drive immediately. She shoved the laptop into my hands, practically demanding I bypass the corrupted operating system and pull her presentation folder. I booted her machine into target disk mode and accessed her files from my terminal. While copying her documents, I noticed a folder simply titled Consulting. I opened it, thinking it was just more of her event planning assets. There were no event planning documents in there. There were spreadsheets. Hundreds of rows of names, dates, hourly rates, and highly explicit service descriptions. I dug a little deeper. I found cached web pages for an elite, invite-only companion website. Her profile was pristine and very clear about what she offered. She charged $3,000 for a 4-hour booking. But what really made my blood run cold wasn't just the betrayal. It was the location data attached to her personal calendar. She wasn't traveling for these appointments. She was hosting them. Specifically, she was using our house. My house. She had perfectly scheduled these meetings between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. on the exact 3 days a week my company mandated I be physically present in the corporate office. I cross-referenced the names in her spreadsheet. One client appeared twice a week, every week, for the last 8 months. He was listed under the alias Investor. Attached to his file was a subfolder containing hidden camera footage she had recorded herself. She was secretly filming him during their sessions. She even had a separate Word document drafting demands for a monthly retainer to keep those videos private. She wasn't just running an escort service out of my guest bedroom. She was running an active extortion ring. Oh, and I also found a scanned pawn shop receipt in her downloads folder. She had pawned my grandfather's watch for $4,000. I didn't confront her right then. I needed to let her dig her own grave. I handed her the USB drive with her event planning files, completely calm. She snatched it from me, complaining that I took too long and nearly ruined her schedule. I just nodded, turned around, and went back to my office to formulate a plan. The entitlement ramped up aggressively over the next 2 weeks. Fiancée knew we were exactly 8 months away from the wedding, and she started heavily pressuring me to add her name to the house deed. She claimed her parents were withholding their substantial financial contribution to the wedding until I proved my commitment by giving her equal equity in the property. She began employing some seriously dirty tricks to force my hand. On my 2 work-from-home days, she deliberately scheduled loud, disruptive client calls right outside my home office door when she knew I was on critical virtual meetings with my company's executives. When I asked her to move to another room, she accused me of financial abuse. She told me I was trying to sabotage her career so she would remain dependent on me. She even brought her mother over for an ambush dinner. Mother sat at my dining table, drinking the wine I bought, and lectured me for an hour about how a real man provides security for his future wife. Mother explicitly stated that if I didn't sign the deed over to a joint trust by the end of the month, they would cancel the wedding and publicly brand me as a controlling narcissist to our entire social circle. I just sat there, eating my steak, watching them coordinate this massive manipulation tactic. I already had the router logs. I already had the hidden camera footage of her bringing investor into our home. I had all the evidence. I was just waiting for her to make the final move. That move happened on a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water. Fiancée walked in, slamming a thick stack of legal documents on the granite counter. It was a quitclaim deed. "Sign it," she demanded, crossing her arms. "I'm done waiting. You either sign this right now, or I pack my bags and my parents make sure your reputation in this city is absolutely destroyed." I looked at the paperwork, and then I looked at her. Her posture was rigid, radiating absolute arrogance. She genuinely believed she had backed me into an inescapable corner. "No," I said quietly. Her face contorted, and the mask slipped completely. She stepped closer, invading my personal space, pointing a manicured finger hard against my chest. "You don't get to say no to me," she sneered. "I run this relationship. I bring in the real money. You're just a glorified IT guy who got lucky with real estate. You're not man enough to tell me no." I smiled. It was a genuine, completely relaxed smile. "Okay," I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened the message thread with her dad. I attached the screenshot of her explicit companion profile, the spreadsheet showing her earnings, the pawn shop receipt for my watch, and a clear, high-resolution still frame from her own extortion videos showing her in bed with investor. I hit send. Then I placed my phone face up on the counter. "I'm not signing the house over," I told her. "But I think your dad is going to have some serious questions about your actual business model." It took exactly 45 seconds for my phone to ring. The caller ID flashed her dad's name. I answered it, put it on speakerphone, and set it back on the counter. "Is this real?" Dad's voice was deathly quiet. There was no greeting, no confusion, just the cold, hard tone of a man looking at a complete disaster. I pulled the data directly from her local drive. I said, leaning against the sink, "Check the timestamps. Check the IP logs I attached. It's all verified." Fiancée stared at the phone, her face draining of all color. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Shut your mouth." Dad snapped through the speaker. The sheer venom in his voice made her flinch backwards. "Do you have any idea who that man in the photo is? Do you?" Fiancée couldn't speak. She just shook her head, staring blankly at the phone. I knew exactly who he was. I had done my research the night I found the files. "That's Marcus," Dad yelled, his composure completely breaking. "Marcus is the primary capital backer for my entire commercial development firm. He holds the notes on 3 of my ongoing projects. And you are sleeping with him and extorting him? You entitled little brat. You just bankrupted our entire family." The twist had unraveled perfectly. She hadn't just been extorting a random wealthy guy. She had been targeting her dad's most vital business partner, completely oblivious to the financial ecosystem she was destroying just to fund her spa weekends and designer bags. Dad hung up the phone. The silence in the kitchen was heavy and suffocating. Then, Fiancée erupted. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry or beg for forgiveness. She went completely feral. She grabbed the stack of deed papers and threw them at my face. She swept her arm across the counter, shattering 2 drinking glasses and a heavy decorative bowl against the hardwood floor. "You ruined my life," she screamed, lunging at me. I stepped back out of her reach, keeping my hands raised, open and clearly visible. I didn't say a single word. Realizing I wasn't going to engage physically, she resorted to her ultimate dirty trick. She looked at me with pure malice, then reached up and violently scratched her own face and neck. She dragged her nails deep enough to draw blood. She grabbed her phone from her pocket and dialed 911. "Help me," she shrieked into the receiver, instantly producing hysterical, breathless sobs. "My fiancé just attacked me. He threw glass at me, and hit me in the face. "He's trying to kill me. Please send someone." She dropped the phone on the floor and glared at me, a victorious smirk cutting right through the fake tears. "You're going to jail," she hissed at me. "And I'm getting a restraining order. This house is legally mine by tomorrow." "You forgot what I do for a living," I replied, simply gesturing up toward the top of the kitchen cabinetry. There's a wide-angle lens right next to the crown molding. It records audio and video direct to a secure cloud server. Her smirk vanished instantly. The police arrived within 7 minutes. 2 officers knocked heavily on the front door. Fiancée rushed to open it, immediately launching into her rehearsed performance. She pointed to her bleeding neck. She pointed to the broken glass on the floor. She pointed at me, sobbing uncontrollably about how I snapped when she asked to postpone the wedding. The primary officer looked at me and asked me to step outside onto the porch. I complied immediately. I didn't argue or raise my voice. I calmly pulled out my iPad, accessed my secure server, and handed it to the officer. "Officer, I am the sole owner of this property. Inside that house is a woman attempting to steal it by faking a crime. Here is the uninterrupted, high-definition footage of the last 20 minutes, including her destroying my property and self-inflicting those injuries right before calling your dispatch." The officer stood on my porch and watched the video. He watched her scream, break the glass, scratch her own neck, and make the fake phone call. He handed the iPad back to me, his expression hardening. He walked back into the house without a word. In the United States, filing a false police report is a crime. When it involves fabricating domestic violence to illegally displace someone from their home, the police absolutely do not take it lightly. They placed her in handcuffs right there in my living room. She screamed for her mother. She threatened to sue the entire police department. They read her Miranda rights and escorted her out to the back of the cruiser. Because she had established legal residency by living there and receiving mail, I knew I couldn't just throw her belongings out onto the lawn. That would be an illegal self-help eviction, and I wasn't going to give her any ammunition to sue me. The very next morning, I hired a landlord-tenant attorney. We officially served her with a 30-day notice to quit at the county jail. She bailed herself out 2 days later, but the conditions of her release for the false report charge included a mandatory protective order to stay away from the victim. Me. She couldn't legally return to the property anyway. The fallout from her actions was absolute and permanent. Marcus, the investor, pulled all his funding from her dad's company the second the extortion attempt came to light, desperately attempting to salvage his own marriage. Her dad's firm went into receivership within the month. Her parents cut her off entirely, refusing to pay a single dime for her criminal defense lawyer. When the 30 days on the eviction notice expired, she obviously hadn't removed her belongings. My attorney filed an unlawful detainer lawsuit. The judge granted the eviction by default and legally allowed me to move her things to a commercial storage unit. I then filed a civil lawsuit in small claims court for the maximum allowable limit in my state, which is $10,000, to cover the stolen grandfather watch, the camera equipment, and the property damage in the kitchen. She didn't even bother to show up to the hearing. I won a default judgment and immediately filed the paperwork to garnish whatever legitimate wages she ever managed to earn in the future. She lost the house. She lost her family's wealth. She lost her secret, illegal income. She is currently facing trial for extortion and making a false report, living in a weekly motel on the outskirts of the city. I still live in my house, entirely at peace, with a vastly upgraded security system. Sometimes, the loudest people in the room are just begging for you to turn up the volume on reality. If you want to learn how to properly configure your home firewall before your partner tries to steal your equity, hit that subscribe button.